Hi, my name is Rob Goddard, and I've been buying and selling businesses for the past 20 years or so. Let me ask you a question about lawyers. Why are they so darned expensive? Well, that was one of my questions amongst others that I posed to Jo Rogers, who's the owner of a innovative and really interesting law firm called Navistar Legal. So find out her answer to that question and a number of others that I posed to her in this following video. Hi and welcome again, and I've got really exciting actually to have this conversation with Jo Rogers. Jo and I have known each other for 10 years or so. Hello, Jo. Well, welcome to the...
Thank you.
I mean, this isn't our first radio because we've done some talks between us before remotely, and we've done some talks. I remember when we first met at the Google campus, you were kind enough to invite me to be a co-speaker at one of your events.
It was the best event I've ever held, and there were 140% people attendance. So thanks for joining. Thanks for being the attraction to that. Great. Yeah. So
yeah.
How to build your business for exit, which literally was the topic. So it was.
There you go. I have a little bit of experience on that side, but the reason that we're speaking and putting out this message today really to people sort of following on me on YouTube and LinkedIn is well, you're part of an international coaching group that I'm facilitating. So really good actually to have there's 10 of us, 10 different industries, and different countries as well. It's not just the UK. Really interesting how so many business issues and challenges are shared regardless of industry and sector.
And yes. And for me, how similar those issues are across industries. You're like, oh, that's me. Oh, and how much you can see in someone else's problems. Like, oh, I do that.
I know. I think there's a book, quite a famous book that says there's nothing new under the sun, which is quite reassuring, actually. We're all in the same boat, really.
Yeah, it's like the human experience, isn't it? Well, I say we, let me just talk about me. I complicate a lot of things. I think it's part of my nature and my job. I guess we'll talk a little bit more about the legal profession later on, but it's so simple when you hear somebody mention it in certain ways. And it's like, there was something you said the other day. If you want to grow your business, you have to have a salesperson. That either has to be you or you have to bring somebody else in. I mean, it feels like a Winnie the Pooh. You know, Winnie the Pooh, they have the Tower of Pooh. Like it felt like one of those really simple but highly profound moments where I went, oh my God, yes, I can't grow a business without sales. Genius. So yeah. And I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one that gets stuck in these annoying little niches where I go, I don't know, I know what I need to do, I'm just not entirely sure of how to do the next step. And when you talk it through, you realize it's a really simple answer.
Well, business is simple, it's human beings that complicate it.
Yes.
So you are a solicitor stroke lawyer, I don't know, of some renown. In fact, you're dual qualified, I read as well.
I am
across the Atlantic. So why don't you tell the audience who you are, what you do for your clients, and what? Yeah,
I love that you started this with, you know, exciting. This is going to be really interesting, and you're talking to a lawyer who's going to be talking about M&A. I'm going to make it more interesting though. My background. My name's Jo Rogers. I am the CEO of Navistar Legal. I am. Oh gosh, actually, I was going to say I'm 10 years qualified. I'm not. I'm X number of years qualified. I started my life in the US firms, and we were listing companies on the alternative investment market. That was kind of the background. They were called special purpose acquisition companies, blank company, just a management team from the US, and they'd be listing here on the London Stock Exchange on the AIM market. And then, but they would only list once they've got 3-5 different purchases. And we're talking about £240 million worth of businesses that they were going to buy. And they would reverse take over these businesses. That's where my my legal life started out. And I guess I've progressed, changed. I've had quite a various career, to be honest. So I worked at American Express, I worked for the big boys, and then I started working with smaller companies. My first client was actually an American Express subsidiary that I helped do a management buyout of. And they've been with me ever since. And I wanted to create, I mean, I guess we're talking about 10 years ago when the legal profession started to talk about process driving, and there was a change. There started to be a difference in communication around new law, which is it. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, yeah. So this idea of new law and the different structures and different ways of people working. And I was at American Express at the time, and it occurred to me that I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be a part of something different. I wanted to be a part of the change. And I guess here we are today. The legal profession has changed. Tech, people, routes to law. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who did an apprenticeship, started an apprenticeship 5 years ago at ITV. She was the first apprentice in the UK for a legal apprentice. And so all these things have changed. And I really get kind of enthusiastic about that change, and I'm passionate about that change. But most importantly, I could see these big changes happening at the corporate level. And I thought, well, that's all very well and good. And you can pay to have these pretty presentations put together. But I really want to work with the people, the lifeblood of the community. I want to work with those people that are already doing exciting and new and different things. I want to give them a brand experience that is different and unique. And really, I'd say skip ahead to where we are now. Navistar is, I would say Navistar 2.0. I had to restart after a health issue, but we are a team that seems to be growing well and incorporating that brand experience and changing the way that we're able to support the smaller mid-sized businesses.
Yeah, there's two things I really admire about you, Joe. One, yeah, you have your own personal journey and health issue, but you battled through, and you restarted. And a lot of people would have just given up and found something easier in life, but you didn't. And the second thing I admire about you is that you are not atypical of a lawyer. And I've met a few, hundreds over the last 20 years of selling businesses. You're not atypical, which is probably why you and I get on. Because you're real.
We're also talkers, and we love a good chat. But thank you, bro. I'm going to take that as a real compliment, because for me, I described it early on. I was looking back at business plans. So I've just moved home. And you open those boxes that have followed you everywhere, and you think, I really ought to open these boxes and do something with the stuff that's in them. And a lot of it was paperwork, and a lot of it was paperwork from when I was originally working at American Express. Had this idea, was jotting down ideas on a page and right, what would this look like? And it all came down to personality. It came down to a different way of thinking and being, and this idea that lawyers, not the law, lawyers and business owners were very different in lots of ways in terms of risk, for example. They had different thinking about risk, which is a good thing. We want balance, right? We want that level of diversity. And that bringing them together, or bringing this lawyer to the person who's really risk averse, or bringing this entrepreneurial lawyer spirit to the lawyer that actually wants to set up and move their own business. I could see that there were lots of, I kind of see it as an audio, the sound mixer, but you could mix all these things. And of course, for me, originally, when I started in law, that mix was not okay. It was, you are either this or you're not a good lawyer. And it has taken me, I would say 20 years from training to now to go, is that true? Does it make me not a good lawyer because I'm personable or passionate about what I do, or that I can understand that this particular business owner doesn't want to take that risk, or actually is perfectly happy with this risk? and is perfectly okay with the idea that even though I'm telling them it's, don't do it, or they will, they have done what they need in order to understand what's right for them. And for me, that's, it kind of created a bit of a philosophy for me.
Yeah, and it'd be quite obvious from the off for the audience to pick up that you're not in the traditional mold of a lawyer or solicitor. But so with Navistar Legal, your company, why would I pick you rather than the law firm down the road if I was like doing some investment fundraising, I needed a lawyer, or maybe exiting my business and I needed a commercial or corporate lawyer? Why would I pick Navistar rather than the company down the road?
Well, first question is, what are you doing? But yes, if you're doing investment, for me, it's a matter of people doing this thing day in, day out. Understanding business has got to be top priority for me. So I talk a lot to business owners, like the conversations we have, I go away and I'm like, right, we can bring that in here, here, here. These are the sorts of products or processes that need to underlie. So for me, it comes down to business knowledge. But you might say, oh yeah, but somebody who's been working at Clifford Chance for 30 years understands business. Don't quite understand small business. They're not in small business. And the lawyers that we work with are all in business, have been in small businesses and understand that level. When I say small businesses, I'm not talking about small as in turnover. I'm talking about small teams. So it might be that you're in a partnership of, often it's like 2 or 3 men that come together and they're either buying a business or they've been in partnership with their wives or significant other and they're going to sell their business. So these are people who have, they've got that family focus. And for me, that matches what, how we work with more of that family way of working.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I've always said from my perspective, I've spent 20 years helping my clients sell their businesses, and I've done my own as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've categorized law firms into 2 groups. Both groups know the law because they're qualified.
It's a given.
But the difference from my own experience and my opinion is that the pragmatic lawyer, as opposed to law firm, the pragmatic lawyer wins the day, because I've experienced situations where you get one or both law firms on both sides trying to score points.
Oh.
And actually that they've lost sight of their respective client's objective, which is to sell their business. What they're trying to do is fight with one another adversarially, and all that happens is the lawyer's bill goes up, the client doesn't win. And so it's really refreshing. I spend my time with pragmatic lawyers who obviously know the law, but they're pragmatic, and they're trying to find creative solutions to get round a hump in the road. So I presumably, I know the way that you're acknowledging is that's your mindset.
The commercial element for sure, but for me that comes down to risk. I say that there are a few things, and they all begin with P. So I like that you said pragmatic, like the people. So it tends to be, we don't have purely, but most of our lawyers tend to be women. Now, what does that say? Probably nothing, but there is a certain there's a certain delivery that is a little bit more friendly and less, it's going to be like that. So the people element, important. They know business, they understand business, they've been in business for years, they've worked as in-house counsel. In-house is very different to private practice. And in an in-house, and this is the piece for me I was talking about earlier, risk, you can take certain risks. So if I were to give you this number, I do this when I'm speaking, so I'm going to do this to you. On a scale of 1 to 16, so 1, this is a personal attitude to risk. When I was a 1, it was when I worked in a US law firm. I dotted every I, I crossed every T. I spent hours meticulously making sure that the pages were clean on a document. It was, that level. My only investment, I laugh, is each year would be an ISA, and that ISA would bring me in like 0.0001% of interest. And I was like,
still does, Joe.
Do I go for that, or do I go for the 0.00001%? Oh, because these. that was the level. I'd have the spreadsheet with the ISA numbers, but the ISA number, yeah, anyway. So that was my personal attitude to risk was a 1. And it would always be, don't do anything that is outside of exactly what you need to do. On the other end of the scale, and this is the kind of legal versus business, it's not versus, it's a spectrum. On the 16 end of the scale, you've got throw caution to the wind, agree something on a handshake, often forget what was agreed. Like there's but it's not all like there's a chaos to it from my perspective because I'm down here. But actually, it's like a moving, fast-paced, dynamic. Everything is in. There may be it's other people kind of picking it up as they're going. You know, they rely on other people, and often they can rely on ones to do a lot of the work. So a 16 may really need a 1, and there's a balance in all of this. Now I say I'm now a 6 to an 8 because I've had experience. I'm in business, and I can say, yeah, generally I can go higher if I need to. If I've got a client that's higher up the scale, but my job is kind of to sit in that 6 to 8 piece and not slow things down, but definitely kind of go, right, these are the risks. And that for me, that context and seeing risk and seeing what matters and seeing what doesn't does change things. But I will say, I have been in the position where I've been at loggerheads with another lawyer, and it's
for sure.
It's totally, it feels in the moment very difficult to get out of that. And one of the things that we do, like we fix our prices and we have packages. So we say it's going to cost this. It's very interesting that all those people that I've had loggerheads with don't have fixed pricing.
I was going to say, so Navistar don't charge by the hour. So you've got an incentive if you're fixing your prices then to do the job well, but pragmatically and get it over the line.
Yeah, of course, if there's a big thing that kicks off, and often, you know, lawyers can be the alternative. But what we also do is say, we'll have that initial conversation with the lawyer and I'll report back to the client and say, he's pragmatic, he does this. I think that this is going to be a smooth journey. We can commit to this. If it's somebody who is holding back or saying, oh, I don't know, we can't do electronic signing, or if they've got something that seems very, very low risk and they're already niggling about it, I will report that back as well. And so for me, that it's part of the process. I want to make it as easy as possible for my client. But we all know, you know, stuff happens in between.
I know.
Life gets in the way.
You're right. A few years ago, I had a deal that was teetering. It was in the sort of the 11th hour, so probably the last week before completion. And there was still lots of humps in the road. And the lawyer that was acting on it cancelled a trip to the Far East, a holiday, in order to stay in the UK and get it done. And when people do that, it sticks in the memory, doesn't it? When you're referring in your clients to a pragmatic, open, friendly lawyer and law firm, those things stick in the mind. And I was doing a podcast last week with a good friend of mine, George Swift, and it was on the 15 common traits of self-made millionaires.
Ooh.
And one of them is about risk. And self-made millionaires are not gamblers, but they take risks, but they calculate them. And there's a difference between gambling, which is all on black, and making a calculated judgment between the constraints of legal statute and also a pragmatic on the commercial. There's the legal and there's the commercial, as you know. So it's that blend that really sets apart law firms, in my experience. So I was thinking, as you were speaking there, what are the biggest challenges? Can you name the top 3 challenges that you find when you're trying to either raise investment funding or selling a business with your clients? What are the regular things that come up?
Well, let me think. Raising investment or selling a business, did you say?
Yeah, either or maybe there's some common between the two.
There are definitely common, because the sale, if you think about what's a sale of a business, usually if we're talking about a share sale, we're talking about a share sale. And therefore, how is that relationship? So we're talking about investment. How's that relationship going to look going forward? I always say, if the clearer you are early doors about what you want, and now I know you do this with people who are going to sell their business, what's it going to look like afterwards The clearer you are with that, if you're selling a business or if you're bringing an investor in, the easier it is to see the red flags up front. Too many times I see people just say, oh, well, I've been offered this much. I'm going to tell you a story. I had an amazing conversation with this woman yesterday. He said, I know that no is the answer to any request to a change in shareholders agreement. I was like, wow. She knows, because she knows the worth. She knows that the terms are fair. She's been entirely reasonable, and that she's not going to mess about with making little niggly changes for one person so that another person could either say, oh, I'm going to change that. You're dealing with too many people. Yeah. So this is an investment piece. You're dealing with too many people, and you start a change over here, it has a ripple effect. Having clear boundaries and having a clear understanding of where you want to go. So what does that relate to with selling? We may have only met at the Google event, but I actually came to an event that you were running. Can't remember where it was. Can picture the name, but couldn't tell you off that it was with an investment company. And it was an investment pitch. And I remember you saying, know your red flags. I'm pretty sure that a lot of my philosophy that I've got have come from things that you talked about, or 10 years ago.
Yeah, the deal breakers.
Know your red flags. Know what is a no, and know what type. And it will sound a little bit cheesy, but I'm a big one for envisioning. Going forward and thinking about, because when people are looking for investors or the seller or the buyer that's going to be the perfect person, know what that might look like. Are they going to be coming in and making loads of changes, or do you care? I mean, you might not care, and no judgment on that. You might not care that your business will go under. You just want to make sure you get your money. Know what that looks like. So that's number one.
Number one, yeah.
Really, really clear. And I think a lot of that work can be done before. Often, this is what happens. People come to me and they go, we've got a term sheet. This looks like this. I would say before that happens, tap into the generosity of any lawyer you're going to use and say, hey, can I have a chat about what I might want to add, or how I might want to put these things, how I might want to put this together. Frankly, that is what the broker does, by the way. That's your job, right? You're looking at those sorts of things, but not everybody does that. And if you can get really clear, that's important. I would say in getting investment, there's friends, families, I think they say friends, families and fools, don't they? I call that soft money. That's like worst case scenario. You mess up on this money. This is investment, but also in the sales. Worst case scenario, if a friend buys your business off you and things go completely wrong, hopefully you're not going to end up in a courtroom. And your terms are likely to be a bit softer. When you start moving up the private equity VC level, you're looking at, again, this comes down to envisioning, like you may need the backing of VCs and their money to get to the 100 million, 200 million pounds investment later on. You're going to have harsher terms. And again, really understanding what it is that you as an individual needs to get out of it is really important. Again, I guess that comes right back down to clarity, but it's knowing what it is in the big vision. Taking a lot of time, kissing a lot of frogs, not such a good idea with these things. And I heard this same woman yesterday. She said she pitched for investment. She then said, come and join me on a call. She had 12 people on the call, and she really monopolized her time. And I thought, that's brilliant, for an investment pitch.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, yeah. 11th hour.
Third one.
11th hour, I would say.
11th hour, what? People changing their minds and bringing things in at the last minute?
Yeah. Tough one. And
surely that doesn't happen.
I despair, and it's where it's where trust is most broken. And I'm not necessarily saying, I have a philosophy again, that most people are very good people, but also that they're looking out for their best interests as well. And so this is a mixture between people looking out for their best interests. The more honest you are, the more you can create that data room. So data rooms are what I would call the jewel in the crown. If you've got a good data room, these things happen less often. If you don't have the structure of good cash flow that's being dealt with monthly, management accounts that are being looked at, what's going to happen at the 11th hour is someone's going to go, the sales aren't right. or there's something wrong here. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're attempting to screw you over or get something, but something doesn't quite look right. And they would have looked at it at the beginning, and then it might be 2 months before they're looking at it at the end, and they're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. So I would say that wealth and that treasure trove, the earlier you can do that, comes down to structure. And the 16s don't like that structure. Find somebody who can start putting that structure in place. A PA that loves their, niggly folders, and they can start filing those things. So it's really easy to find. And that you've got those processes in place. Just even having management accounts for me blew my mind. Oh.
Yeah.
So
No,
start early would be.
Yeah, I'd have to say it was quite a few years ago now, but I sold a business that had 3 shareholders, and they all had company cars, Aston Martin DB9s, lovely cars.
Cars, yeah.
Yeah. Now, on the day of completion, given that it was 5 months into due diligence, day of completion, my clients, the 3 of them, broke the news to the buyer in the hotel room, because in those days it wasn't remote. You all had to meet with all your advisors and loads of paperwork. They said, we want to keep the DB9s because they want to go to the Nürburgring. In fact, they'd booked it.
I bet they didn't even think about it, because in their minds, it was theirs already.
It was theirs. But in fact, but of course, the assets belonged to the limited company, so it wasn't theirs. Now, that would, do you know what? If they'd raised it, taking your point, if they'd raised it early on, it wouldn't have been a problem. It was a £19.1 million transaction. And what happened is that deal failed on completion day, because the buyer said, do you know what? If you can pull this sort of stunt on us, what else hasn't been discovered in due diligence? We don't want to buy from you. We'll find another target business. Now, we did go on to find another buyer, but it's another 6 months, 7 months. So you're absolutely right. It's doing it early. It's making sure that you don't no surprises with the buyer.
And the problem is, I feel like this when it comes to any deal. Often we were talking about processes and saying, well, we could do that up front, and you can do that up front, and we could get that information early doors, because I'm a big process fan. But you often don't want to put too much hope into that deal until you've got to a certain point. Once you get to that certain point, it's almost too late to go back to that point, and you want to get quick, get the deal done. I'm going to add a bonus fourth. I would say timeline. Be realistic with timeline. Wanting it to be done in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Can it be done? Oh God, yeah, you can do it. But everybody's taking a little bit more of a risk, and especially the buyer, but the seller is too. And if there's a clear timeline and a bit of a project plan, you can go, right, we know, meeting every week, we're going to make sure this is done by this time. It leaves everybody, because at the end of those 3 weeks, if it's not done and suddenly then these issues come up, you then go, oh, well, we'll get it done for next week. And you end up in this very short cycle of like, gotta get it done. That doesn't help anybody. It means easy burnout, because you've already put a lot of work in up front, quick burnout, and deal fatigue. And deal fatigue, to me, is where most of these deals drop down at that level.
They do. So top tip there from Joe. That weekly meeting, I swear by them, because you can iron out these things usually well early on. And also, I think it's good to build a relationship of trust as well. So you're getting all the, not just buyer and seller, but their key advisors, the lawyers, maybe even the accountants or the CFO.
I worked with your team on a deal, and is something that I picked up from that team. It was something that I said, this has been so easy and effortless. And I knew who everybody was, and we were like, yes, and also it smooths. The lawyer on that deal was amazing, by the way. Rena was brilliant, but it just smooths any edges between the lawyer that can be quite harsh and the seller who's like, we'll just go, quick go. Yeah, that often means that the lawyer's coming back going, well, no, not to that. Oh, but they've already said that. And if you're saying it in the context of a meeting, and that weekly meeting, everybody is aware of where we are with certain things.
So that says something. You're even complimentary about the law firm on the other side. That's how it should be, right?
Honestly, I wish there was someone I met early on who said, what if we could just get all the lawyers that kind of work in that way together, and we could recommend people. And I know there's like conflicts of interest pieces and independence pieces, and there are arguments around that. I tell you what, if I could, I would, because for me, that's where the greatest value is. If you've got a lawyer on the other side, if I'm working with somebody, if I'm working for a buyer and you've got a great lawyer on the seller side, they're communicative, they are easy to work with. I think that's worth its weight in gold, because then when the real issue arises, you can have a proper conversation.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch focus, although it is linked to what we've just discussed, but it's a slightly different angle. I get people, business owners, saying to me, Rob, why on earth are lawyers so expensive? Could you like to discuss, as they say in exams, discuss what's your take? There is a reputation that your industry charges far too much for what they deliver.
Yeah.
Just being devil's advocate.
Value, right? And this is one of the discussions that 10 years ago, when I was saying, these are one of the conversations that were being raised. There's a guy called Richard Susskind who's in talking about tech and the automation and the bespoke. And I'll probably budget what he actually says, but he says there are the commoditized areas, and then there are the bespoke areas. And those bespoke areas are really where law will be going towards personal human interaction. And that's where you've got the kind of one-to-one, it's very specific in this level. And then down here, you've got easy to do, easy to churn out. That's why you see so many, tech platforms with the documentation and the T's and C's, etc. Because, they're easy to churn out. They can be technically, they're easy to do. Now, also, this comes down to risk. Everything I speak about really comes down to risk and reward, and balancing it up. At this level, you've probably got higher risk, possibly higher rewards, and it's going to be high bespoke. At this, it's going to be low risk, maybe low reward. Maybe, for a small business, this might be proportionately, maybe very, very high reward, but it's not much is going to happen, and all the things you need to do, ticking off the insurance, etc. And then you've got those pieces in between. And that's really my way of saying, in theory, and I think up until now, because we didn't have the tech piece, most of that was done by an individual human being. I love tech platforms like Seed Legals for investment. I love guys at Surmise to do contract sourcing. They're at this level. So they're at the level where you can get something done. I don't want to say quick and dirty. That's not what I mean. I don't mean, but they're doing some big deals at this level, and then they're growing into more bespoke. For me, there's two elements around cost. One is that human experience. I talk about brand experience. It's really about the human experience, the human interaction, and the education. I was going to talk about, USP for me is, I don't just run a deal with somebody and do the documentation. I like to walk them through a process that they know that they can take on later and educate them around that piece. I'm sure we'll end up putting it on a training program at some point, but it literally is giving them the tools so they go, I need to think about that next time. And that to me is the risk piece. That experience can be automated, but it has to only be automated because what you get in the automation is consistent. You get consistent and you get standard, but many of these deals are not consistent and standard. So that's one piece, I would say, of the puzzle. I think there are others as well, because there are law firms that have got incredibly good brand names and they've gone through a particular training. And if you've got high risk, they are going to be, you never get fired for using IBM, that kind of mentality. I do believe also this idea of money. You and I talked a lot about money at the beginning when we started working together 6-8 months ago. And I think that lawyers are starting to move towards the idea of value. And I often say that to somebody when they come on board and they say, oh, we need some T's and C's. And I say, okay, tell me a little bit more about it. And I said, look, I want to add more value than I actually cost you. So I want to make sure that you are either in this bracket, in which case, here's something that you can do here. But if you're in this bracket, I want to make sure that you get all the things that you need. And I think that's a concept that's not really taught in the legal profession. It's this or this. It's black and white, rather than the colorful thinking. I think that's what entrepreneurial thinking does. It brings in a bit of color and context, whereas we're in the one category. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
You caught me between coughs.
Yeah, no, I thought you were saying, oh, God.
No.
Right.
Well, it links very nicely to my final question, because I'm conscious time's running out on us quite quickly. Time flies, doesn't it, when you're enjoying yourself? It drags when you're not enjoying yourself. So I get this question quite often from business owners, quite frequent, several times a month. Rob, what's wrong with me just going on to doing a Google search and getting a template, whether it's a shareholders agreement, whether it's a debenture loan note agreement, even a will? Just, why can't I just do that? Why do I need a lawyer or solicitor? Thoughts?
There is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. That would be my short answer. And it's often the answer that I speak to potential clients coming to me, and they say, well, I've got this template version. I said, well, share it with me on the screen. Oh, that looks standard. Where did you get it from? Oh yeah, they're a good website. Nothing wrong with it at all. Two things though that can take two things for sure. One is the level of understanding of those template clauses. A lot of people come to me and say, are these terms right? I've taken them from here. And this is how I got involved with Seed Legals, by the way, because I was getting people coming to me saying, I've got this shareholders agreement, I've downloaded it, it looks fine. What are the risks? But of course, Seed Legals aren't in a position to be able to say those risks. So whilst you can read a document, you may even understand it depending on your experience. You may not understand the nuances. Yeah. Now there's then the next level of bespoke elements. So if you then say, actually, this is really important. This is a £100,000 contract and we're a £50,000 business. It comes down to risk and reward. And I think that, look, can you use a template document? Yes. Do issues usually arise? I mean, look, I can probably give you 3 issues with any one template. I'll say, does it have a limitation liability? How are you going to get paid? And what are you actually doing for the services you're providing? Like that would be those are my big 3 for service agreements. Do they have those 3 things? And fourth, is there an indemnity in there? Do a search for indemnity or look for INDE. See if there's any indemnity in there. Those would be my quick check-ins, but I can't do that I can't just go, well, let me have a look at a document I've never seen. And therefore, then you go, I want to add more value than I'm actually taking from you as a payment. So I want to make sure that this is a higher risk. And I can explain to you those risks. And I can go away and make those decisions because I'm experienced. I've done this loads of times before. We used this for years. I never had a problem. I'm like, for me, keep with the template. Stick with the template that's worked. Have you ever had an issue? Oh yeah, we did around refunds. Okay, we can just look at that piece. So yes, you definitely can. You do not need a lawyer. It's all based on your risk.
Do you know what? You're absolutely right, because I know with the M&A company that I started 10 years ago and recently sold, 10 years, I think the T's and C's version 24. Because you get the standard template and then you learn the what ifs, because it's not necessarily what's in the document, it's what's not in the document
that's correct.
You at the bottom.
Spot on.
So you learn, don't you? And I know Christina and I, my other half and I went for I've got a will, but Christina hasn't. And we're not married yet. And we have children.
Yeah.
So we thought you could get a will on the internet, template will. It's not until Chrissy and I went to a local solicitor, she said, right, so you're not married, you've got children under 18, you've got assets both in the UK and overseas, and what happens to childcare if both of you die?
Or another one that somebody told me with me and my partner, because we don't have children. We don't have children together. He has a daughter. He said, you know that you can have this clause in there that says, in consideration of marriage. So you would actually be treated
Yes.
as if you'd been married. I
Yes.
mean, that blew my mind. I didn't know
I know,
that.
and there's tax implications. This
And
law was really good. Yeah, because we've got assets, and some of them I own in my name, some of them we own jointly, and some of them are Christina's. So what we thought, or what she thought, would be a very straightforward process, actually was 3 hours of getting some really helpful what ifs. How do you want it structured, and what works for you? So God knows what the prenup will be like.
I know we're running out of time, but I want to share this because I literally had this conversation with my mum the other day. I am about to go to court relating to a personal issue. I'm not being taken to court. I'm taking someone to court, and it's in a month's time. And I have an insolvency practitioner lawyer who is supporting me. Came highly recommended. I must have spent £20,000 on this so far, maybe 30, coming up to probably a lot of money. And it did get me thinking about the cost and the benefit. But for me, what it does is it gives me a line in the sand. It means I do not have to get into the emotion and the energy draining of that situation. I can send him a few questions, he can respond, and it's dealt with. And a lot of that comes down to mindset. It comes down to what I am focusing on. If I want to spend my entire day, this court case is not actually gaining me any money. It's money I'm already owed. I don't want to spend extra money. I don't spend extra time on it because it's not bringing in cash. I'd much rather spend time in generating something, doing something that I love and I enjoy. And I imagine lots of businesses that say, look, just want a lawyer. I mean, we work as in-house lawyers, and we say, just want somebody to deal with the contract and to manage that. And say, great, no problem. Right, we'll do the M&A stuff. That's what we can do. So it's one more thing off of your mind, and it's one more person that you know you can go to with that. Just a quick conversation. I often just have conversations with people on a day-to-day, and they're like, what do you think about this? We're thinking about doing this. You know, no liability, but just look, this is what I would do. This is how I would do it.
So what's the best way, if someone wants to have that conversation with you, Joe, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
I always say, so email, great. I'll make sure you've got my
we'll get the link
details on there. But actually, what usually happens when people email is that we then end up booking time anyway. So I'll also give you a link which you can book. So people can just book half an hour conversation with me. And like I say, you may not be convinced of the value of lawyers, but having a conversation and just saying, hey, let me find out a little bit more about what you're doing and how you're doing it. It's always good. I love talking to business owners.
Yeah, and obviously they can get hold of you on LinkedIn. I know you're quite predominant on LinkedIn, so it's Joe Rogers at Navistar Legal.
Yes, that is it. And we've got we've got loads of videos up on there as well of other business owners, including one of you.
I know. And for anyone that's thinking about raising investment or selling their business, you can do a couple of things. You can get hold of my book on Amazon and pay me a royalty, or you can email me and I'll send you a free ebook. Also, I've got an online training course, which you'll be pleased to hear, Joe, about selling a business for a top price. You'll be pleased to hear I do labor the point quite heavily throughout the 6 video series that they've got to get the right lawyer in place.
You're basically my marketing team. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. But I'm looking after my own interests because I want to make sure the deal gets over the line. And I know one of the things that there's 2 things that can kill a deal. 2 key things: the lawyer and the accountant. So, I will be interviewing an accountant, I know very well, but I mean, and so often people think, oh, it's about the buyer or the investor pulling out. Actually, do you know what? It's the lawyer and the accountant that can get in the way of the deal coming across. So that training course will be hopefully launching at the end of May, and I think people will find it informative, food for thought, and something they can take away with them I might even have some templates that might be helpful for them.
Great.
Talking about templates, maybe you could put an example sales purchase agreement in there as well, Joe.
I'm happy to do that. We have like the smaller version, so I'm happy to share that with people.
Yeah. Brilliant. So thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure having a chat with you, Joe. Always.
Rob, I love these.
Long may it continue.
I feel like I've been buoyed up for the afternoon. If I could do this all day, every day.
Yeah, you wouldn't make any money though.
Do the work now, but
no, I'll let you get back to your clients. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, take care.